Welcome to Construction Genius. My guest today is Larry Markham. He is the co-founder of Safety Associates for Employers, LLC. And he has a background in health and safety since 1978, owning his own businesses and working with a variety of companies, including contractors, helping them to get into that top 20% of performance in terms of their focus on safety. And Larry is absolutely convinced that there is an inextricable link between safety, productivity, and profitability, and that a safe company is a profitable company. Enjoy my interview today with Larry. You're going to get deep insight into how you, as the leader of your construction company, can drive a safety culture from the top of the business all the way down into the field, and how the field can respond with a real zeal for the type of safety standards and practices that can transform the way your company is run. Really appreciate my time with Larry, and I know you're going to enjoy this interview. Thank you for listening to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Larry, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Larry, tell me a little bit about how this passion that you have for safety, how did you get that passion? How did it develop? Because you've been involved in the construction industry here for many, many years.
Yeah, I've been involved for several years, and it really got started back in 2010. A good friend of mine and I were working on a construction site. He was killed as a result of companies cutting back on safety standards after the 2008 meltdown. Companies, this one in particular, felt that they could not afford some of the safety standards, and so they cut back, and my good friend was killed. My wife and I dedicated starting this business back at that time, and really it's what gets me up every morning and gets my boots on the ground to get out in the field and work with people on a very personal level to explain to them that safety is not only important from a health and productivity standpoint, but certainly just from how it affects a person's life with their families.
That's very interesting, because you mentioned there that this incident with your friend happened during the last downturn. And as we're recording this in May of 2020, construction industry is faced with an unprecedented potential downturn as a result of the COVID-19 virus. As we're in the midst of it, and as we're going to perhaps be going through the repercussions of that for the next couple of years, how can a construction company balance the demands of boosting performance, maintaining profitability, and then also adhering to safety standards? What is your perspective on that?
Well, that's a huge subject, and so we'll dissect that a little bit.
Let's do that.
First thing is that safety is an investment, just like investing in new capital and equipment. You need to invest in your people, because your people are your number one resource and asset. And by demonstrating through management commitment that safety is a top priority for a company, they will in fact boost productivity as well as quality. That's where production, quality, and safety become equal partners.
So then immediately that sounds good. If I'm a construction company owner or an executive, production, quality, safety, it seems like conversations I've had over the years, it's a pendulum. It's not really a balance. It seems to swing between production on the one hand and then swing back to safety when there's an incident or an accident. How can we stop the swing and get to more of the balance?
Well, I think that would be by recognizing that when you do have a serious accident, certainly a fatality, the cost of that is tremendous to a project, right? The project shuts down. They have the investigators come in, doing their interviews and their investigation. And those are just the direct costs, right? Then we all know about the insurance industry, workers' compensation, liability costs, healthcare costs. Those are all on the rise. When you have a serious accident or injury, those certainly spike. especially when your EMR rates and your DART rates jump up. So not only are you increasing your cost of doing business, you're also taking the potential of not getting future business, because most owners now evaluate companies with those metrics in mind before they even get an invitation at the table to bid on a project.
That's great. So that's very interesting to be able to see the knock-on effects of one incident or one accident, not just at that particular time, but for the future of your business as you move forward.
Correct.
In your mind, what do you think sets apart the top 20% of contractors in terms of their approach to safety from the bottom 80%? What sets those companies apart?
I would have to say it's walking the talk. A lot of companies talk the talk about safety. They have the safety slogans. The one that I criticize a lot is always safety first.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really analyze and observe those companies, many times it's safety last and production first. But they've got the banners, they've got the slogans, and so they think they've got a good safety program. The truly exceptional safety program companies are the ones that live and breathe it. The commitment is made from the very top levels of management, instituted throughout the organization through leadership by example, and actually performing and doing the things that they say they're going to do.
So let me ask you this. When you walk onto a job site or you start to work with a company that you can see that they're actually living and breathing it, give us some practical examples of that, please.
Absolutely. Housekeeping is probably number one. I use this example a lot in my trainings. When you go to have your car worked on, which most of us can relate to, if you take it to a shop that's messy and disorganized, what's your general impression? And typically, what kind of work are you going to get? Typically, you're going to get poor performance of work. You're going to get generally higher price because they're disorganized. When you walk onto a job site and the first thing that stands out to you is their cleanliness and organization, it's the same type of an example. You know that they are going to take care of the big things because the little things are already being taken care of.
Okay, so that's interesting. So who is on a job site, who's responsible to drive that cleanliness and organization?
Well, it's absolutely management, right? It's the leaders of that. So it's your project superintendents, your project managers, but it needs to be really kind of a groundswell, almost an inverse funnel, right? When you get everybody taking that personal responsibility and accountability for their own workspace, it makes the leaders' jobs very simple, because then they're really just coaching, they're celebrating the people's successes, but it has to start from the top. But then once it's started from the top and actually is implemented and there's accountability and consequences when there isn't that accountability, next thing you know, it becomes infectious and it becomes a positive infection as opposed to a negative infection.
Okay, so that's interesting, because what you're saying here is that the safety culture begins at the top, but then it seems like it's sustained and driven by what the folks at the bottom are doing. And what I mean by the bottom is in the field, in terms of the way that they attention to detail that they have for their particular workspace. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's the way they engage with it. You're absolutely right.
So then how can I help? Let's say I'm a project superintendent. How can I help my foreman to drive that cleanliness or that orderliness in the workspace? What should I be doing?
I love to use the word coaching, right? In the safety world, there's safety cops and there's safety coaches. I would fall onto the latter side. I'm a safety coach. The people that are cops are the ones that understand regulations, but they might not understand how to actually implement those things to where there's a balance of actually achieving the results from the intent of the regulation as opposed to the letter of the regulation.
Okay, so let me ask you that then. That's interesting, because let's say I'm a construction company owner or executive and I'm looking to hire a safety person or a safety, let's say someone who's going to be leading my safety program. Would you say that it's wise to hire someone who has experience in the field as opposed to someone who just has perhaps book knowledge about safety?
No question about it.
Okay, so tell me more about that though. Why is that important?
Because they've lived it and breathed it. They've probably done everything unsafe under the book. And now they all of a sudden find themselves in a leadership position of driving safety culture. And so there's an instant credibility with the people in the field. when they're cut from the same cloth as the people that they're coaching and working with.
So that's interesting because I think one of the tensions that I've experienced working with my clients is, particularly with some of the COVID-19 stuff or safety in general, there's the letter of the law and there's the spirit of the law. So for instance, you have this idea of social distancing at the moment where folks are supposed to be working 6 feet apart, but perhaps there's a particular task where folks, it's just impossible for them to be 6 feet apart for a period of time if the task is actually going to be executed. So how does a construction company balance then that letter of the law with the spirit of the law and still stay productive and still maintain the project moving forward?
Well, I think a good example would that be maybe pouring concrete.
Okay.
Right? Awfully difficult to maintain 6 foot separation when you're pouring concrete. But we do have personal protective equipment. And maintaining that 6 feet distance is in the absence of providing personal protective equipment. So if you have activities where you cannot maintain that distance, then you make sure they wear respirators and personal protective equipment to keep them safe when they're not maintaining a 6 foot distance.
So then what advice would you have? Let's say you're running a project and maybe you have 2 leaders on the project. You have, let's say you have a superintendent, you have a foreman, you have project manager, and they're all trying to get this project done. But because of the safety regulations, there's a difference in perspective in terms of whether or not we should be executing this particular task or whether we need to do additional work before we can execute that task. What advice do you give to companies as they're internally trying to balance the tension between the regulations and the execution?
Well, it all comes down to communication, right?
Okay, tell me more about that.
You need to make sure that you have a clear focus and clear understanding of what the outcome is, right? So in problem solution, I always like to start at the end, right? And then once you identify what the outcome you want is, then you start to identify what the obstacles are. And once you've identified the obstacles, then you start to find workarounds and solutions for those.
Okay. And it's interesting, because let's say in a construction company, after there's an incident, the leadership in the company, their attention is gotten for a period of time. They really make that emphasis on safety. They start to have those regular tailgate meetings with the guys. And, every morning it's being repeated and repeated. And then it kind of fades away over time. What is the difference in leadership between successful and then failed safety initiatives?
I really think it is making sure that there's not complacency, right? The dangerous C word. When complacency begins to set in, then you're in trouble. So you have to remain ever vigilant. And you need to make sure that you're having these tailgate meetings with fresh perspectives. Nothing is more boring than listening to the same person talk every morning during a JSA meeting instead of actually engaging with the other people who probably have as much experience, maybe more. And when they start to share their stories, when they start to engage with the other people, it becomes a groundswell where the next person wants some recognition for having something to say and having some actual input. So it's really about engaging and looking for input and feedback from your people as to how we can solve this problem together, as opposed to a project manager or a project superintendent saying, I've got all the answers, you guys just get behind me and follow. That's not leadership.
Okay, so then let's talk about that. Let's talk about how to run an effective tailgate meeting. Give us a quick breakdown here of how you would recommend to run an effective tailgate meeting in terms of safety on a regular basis.
I would engage every person at that meeting. I would ask them a direct, specific question that they can answer and identify with and contribute to that meeting.
Okay.
Right? Because typically these meetings are early in the morning. Right? A lot of times people want to just kind of disconnect and go into a slumber or be not engaged and involved. You have to get them involved. You have to sometimes actually put them on the spot and say, hey, Joe, tell me one thing about whatever the particular subject is.
Okay, so let me stop you there. Give me some examples of specific questions that could be asked at a tailgate meeting that'll provoke some really good thinking and good discussion.
Absolutely. So we know in construction, falls are the leading cause of fatalities. Yes. Yeah. So fall protection. Let's say you're having tailgate meeting on doing personal fall arrest systems, right? PFAS, right? So you might ask him, show me here real quick, how do you inspect your body harness? Okay, and then you might ask the next guy, okay, show me how you inspect your lanyard, or show me how you inspect your self-retracting lifeline, right? Joe, at what height does guardrail need to be installed around a working surface when you're working on an elevated surface? So ask them very direct questions that they know the answers to, so you're really setting them up for success.
See, that's fundamental right there, because you're giving them an opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge. And through the demonstration of that knowledge, there's a degree of confidence that people can obviously display, and a degree of competency that is not only beneficial to them, but also beneficial to the people who they're working with.
Absolutely.
That's very interesting. So asking specific questions, and I like this because it's not necessarily a specific question about the project, but it's a specific question about their activities that they're going to be engaged in on that day. Did I hear that right?
That's exactly right.
Okay, interesting. And then, so this is key. Now, do you think a tailgate meeting should always be run by the foreman or the superintendent, or what's your opinion on that? How should that be addressed?
I think that's probably the worst model. I think the best model is each day or each tailgate, you go to the person a couple of days ahead of time.
Right.
You say, this is going to be, what we're going to do. Do you have any suggestions? Because you're going to lead this meeting. What would you like to talk about? Hey, by the way, I have a lot of resources that I can help you with. If you give me an idea of what subject you'd like to talk about, I can provide you with resources so that you can run a very effective tailgate meeting.
Excellent. Okay, so you go to them a couple of days ahead of time. You ask them to pick a topic that they're interested in. You get them to prepare some questions. Then then I'm assuming if you're the project manager or the superintendent or the foreman, you then monitor what they do and then give them some feedback afterwards or something like that?
Yeah, you coach them, right? You develop your team members. That's how you get engagement, is by coaching and developing team members.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So let's say I'm a construction company owner. I've tried my best in the past to implement some sort of safety initiative. I've had some success, but frankly, if I'm frank, I know I'm not in that top 20%. What should I do in the next 30 to 60 days to begin to turn the ship around and begin to move my company into a real commitment to that safety culture?
Well, Eric, we all like money. Money talks and you know what walks.
Yeah, right.
So if you want to have an immediate impact at the field, put a $20 bill in somebody's hand that you've acknowledged and recognized for going above and beyond. I can't tell you how much mileage I've gotten out of a few $20 bills at safety meetings when you acknowledge somebody for catching him, what I call catching them doing something right. That's the difference between a safety coach and a safety cop. The safety cop always wants to catch people doing something wrong. Safety coach wants to reward people for doing things right.
That's interesting. So then would that be taking place? So should I, as the superintendent, be bringing like a wad of 20s to the tailgate meeting and be passing those out during the tailgate meeting?
Well, you don't want to, I don't know about a wad, right?
Okay.
Especially depending on the neighborhood that your project's in.
Yeah, right.
But, a couple of selective $20 bills put in some of your key people's hands to start that, I guess you'd call it kind of that excitement or that energy about, hey, this safety guy actually rewards us for doing things right.
Right.
Go a long way.
That's interesting. Now, let's explore something else, because the whole behind safety, there's all these rules and regulations, these boxes that you have to tick. Regulations are changing all of the time. And, frankly, it can get a little bit overwhelming. You can have the best intentions and not realize that you're not in compliance. So what is the difference between safety leadership and safety management? And how do those two things sort of play together in a safety culture?
Well, there's a definite difference between safety management and safety leadership, right? Safety management is about procedures, processes, resources. Safety leadership is about one thing. It's about people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about that. Tell me about that people side.
What do you want to know? in terms, can you be more specific, Eric, as far as?
Well, I think it's interesting because, construction companies, they say, we value our people. And as I look at construction companies, I can see some companies that are extremely committed to their people. I see other companies who seem to be more committed to the money side of it as opposed to the people side. And I feel this tension because, you're in business to make money, but you make money through people.
Right.
How, in terms of that safety leadership, am I to balance those two, not two sides of the equation, but those two aspects of running a business?
Well, I think you got to show, the why,
Okay.
right? In leadership, when we show people the why, it opens the gates to them understanding and wanting to be a part of the process, as opposed to being, a part of the solution, as opposed to being a part of the non-solution, if that makes any sense.
So tell me more about that in terms of the why. So how deep do you want to go on the why? Because I know, for instance, guys, if we have an incident or an accident, that's going to affect our insurance rates, which is going to affect our ability to win work next time because our numbers are going to be higher, which is going to affect the long-term strength of the organization, which is going to affect your ability to work. Now, should I, as a safety leader, be having that conversation with my guys and gals who are in the field not every day, but with my guys and gals in the field?
Absolutely. And you said every day, but as we know, sometimes messages can get old and stale, right?
Yep.
So yes, you need to be having those very candid, honest conversations with clear communication that we're all in this together. Because if our EMR rate and our DART rate goes up due to poor safety, we don't get the opportunity to bid on the project. So then we don't need as many people. So then we have to lay people off. So we all have skin in the game here.
Can you think of a company where, you started working with them and their safety habits were not in that 20%, and then they made a real turnaround and they got into that 20%? Can you think of a company? You don't have to tell me who the company is, but can you think of a company that did that?
Several. Yes.
Several. Okay. So what do those folks share in common? They weren't doing well as far as safety was concerned, and they turned it around and they began to do well. What do they share in common?
They stepped up their game.
Okay.
Right? They actually made a financial investment towards achieving these goals. So first, right, like I said, you have to start from the end. What is the outcome we want? Okay, we want a better safety record, right? So then you have to set metrics. How are we going to get there? Are we going to get there in one fell swoop, or are we going to get there by each day chipping away at that?
Right.
And so that's how it's done. It's by setting a goal and then getting everyone committed towards that common goal, communicating about it effectively, and providing the resources to make it happen.
So when you said finance, so this is very good. So they set an outcome with metrics related to it, and they began to commit to chipping away at it. Give me some idea here of that financial investment. Where did they make financial investment that had the biggest impact in terms of safety?
That would be in training.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So that's a good opportunity as far as the COVID situation is concerned right now. I know a number of my clients have been doing safety training online simply because they have an opportunity to keep their guys and gals, on the payroll, but they're not necessarily working on a project at the moment because of the distancing and all that kind of stuff, or because of the projects being shut down at the moment. But they have been working on their safety. Are you seeing that in organizations?
Oh my goodness, my phone and email has been blowing up. I've been doing so much Zoom training to take advantage of this downtime. So that's a perfect example of the upper 20%, right? Even though their business is slower, they don't have the revenues coming in, but yet they recognize this as an opportunity, not as a pitfall, for them to get ahead of their training, actually make that investment while their revenues are down, so that when things do turn around, they've got their safety programs dialed in, their people are trained, their people are still engaged, their people are ready to go. That's a perfect example of committing and investing in the future.
See, this is fundamental because one of the complaints during the boom times is I don't have time for whatever it is, fill in the blank, right? Hey, dude, now you've got time to focus on safety, and you can lay a really strong foundation when times are challenging for when times get going again, so that you're able to execute in the boom times with a better safety record and make money and be more productive.
Exactly.
So let me ask you this then. Can you give the audience here, and think just specifically in terms of a leader of a construction company, what are 3 immediate actions that the leader of a construction company can take in the next 30 to 60 days to get into that 20%, top 20% of construction companies that are performing safety at a high level?
Well, I think the first would be leading by example.
Okay.
Probably one of the most damaging things to a safety person's credibility, or let's say a CEO or a president of a company, is going out on a job site but not wearing the PPE.
Right.
Right, showing up at the job site, no hard hat, no high vis on, no safety glasses on, but yet he's demanding that all the people do it, yet he isn't willing to do it himself.
Okay.
Okay. So I think leadership by example is probably the key right there. Then it would be to make sure that you're actively listening to your people, because your people have the answers many times to the challenges that we face in the field. And if we will actually listen with an intuitive mind to gather and then to put those practices in place, not only are we going to benefit because we're not reinventing the wheel, your people are going to feel recognized, and just that recognition is going to be a personal reward that they are going to be continuing to wanting to step forward and provide that groundswell of, hey, here's an answer, let's try this.
So leading by example, actively listening. Anything else that they should be doing that as the leader of the company?
Coaching.
Okay.
Right. I had the privilege of playing basketball for Coach K at West Point, and he is all about coaching. Right. It's coaching. Right. Leading from the heart. Right. When you lead from the heart, you do the right things.
Okay. So leading by example, actively listening, and then coaching.
Yes.
So if I'm the construction CEO, let's say I'm running a large company, it could be, 30, 40, 50 million, 500 million, a billion. So I'm not going to be on job sites every single day. I've got multiple people reporting to me. Let's say I'm that type of a leader and I have project executives or a COO reporting to me. How can I drive safety in that kind of environment where I'm not necessarily going to be on the job site with my supers and foremen next week?
Well, you might not be, but you're going to have other people that will be. So you need to create a culture. You need to create an infectious attitude, and it needs to be very visible, right? So maybe you can't be on every job site every week, but you should at least be on one job site one day a week.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me get that. So what you're saying is that even if you're working for a very large company, or if you're running a very large company, you should make a commitment to being on one job site once a week.
Absolutely.
I love that. Okay, excellent. So that would be then a practical way to demonstrate in your example and in your commitment. So when you're on the job site, then that's an opportunity then to be actively listening, maybe pulling one of the key guys aside and talking to them.
That's exactly right, Eric.
So this is the thing, because sometimes what can happen is when you're running a large company, you get disconnected from the folks in the field, and you forget that that's where obviously all the money is made, in the field. And so being able to get down there with the guys and gals in the field and have an eye-to-eye conversation with perhaps someone who isn't even a foreman, but maybe just a lead guy or a key operator, equipment operator, those kinds of conversations can have a key impact upon the organization in terms of safety. Am I hearing that right?
Huge upside potential. When the boss is willing to walk the job site and pick up trash, that message is loud and clear to the rest of the people in the field that we have an owner who lives and breathes this industry just like we do. He's not above us, he's part of us.
That's excellent. I mean, if there's one word of advice I could give to construction executives, particularly higher up in organizations, every opportunity that you can take to be with your folks in the field, whether it be on a project or in a social occasion, whatever the case is, so that they know you, they see you, and they appreciate your involvement with them, that can have a fundamental impact upon your business.
Paramount shift, a paradigm shift, no question. Yep.
So as we're wrapping up here, Larry, Obviously, you've been in the business for a number of years here. Where do you see the safety culture of construction companies going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Becoming more prevalent that safety is a profit center.
Okay.
You drive safety culture from the top to the bottom and you get that groundswell, profits just start to fall in place and it becomes its own profit center. It becomes a actual way to make money by doing things safely. And when you recognize as the top leader of your organization that production, quality, and safety are equal partners, you will benefit greatly at the bottom line.
Okay, excellent. So then, can you just let our audience know how they can get hold of you in terms of the work that you do with construction companies?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity.
Sure.
The name of my company is SAFE, and that's an acronym for Safety Associates for Employers, because I are one. I've been a self-employed person the majority of my career.
There you go.
My wife and I have 7 kids and 7 grandchildren. We live in Reno, Nevada, and our phone number is area code 775-843-8318, and my email is larry@safety4employers.com.
Excellent. Larry, we're going to put the email, the phone number, and your website into the show notes so that everybody has those. So you're in Reno. I don't know if you can answer this question. This is off the top of my head. Let's say I'm wanting to spend a weekend in Reno. What hotel should I stay at?
Now you're putting me on the spot. Well, we like the Atlantis.
The Atlantis? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then let me ask you another question. If there's one place I'm going to eat in Reno, where am I going to eat in Reno?
It would probably be the Oyster Bar at the Atlantis.
Oh, the Oyster Bar at the Atlantis. Okay, we're going to link to the Oyster Bar at the Atlantis in the show notes. Larry, I really, really appreciate you being generous with your time and sharing your insights into safety. Just to let the folks know who are listening to this, if you need help with your safety culture, Larry is definitely someone that you can contact, and the information will be in the show notes so that you can get hold of Larry. Thanks again for spending time with us here today.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.